Ariana had always found comfort in small, quiet things: the hum of her desk lamp, the rhythm of typing, the soft padding of Milo's paws against the floor. Her days followed the same careful pattern: classes in the morning, part-time work in the evening, then late hours spent sketching or reading in her small rented apartment. Milo had been with her since childhood, a golden retriever with gentle eyes and a loyalty that never wavered. He had watched her grow from a shy girl into a tired university student, followed her through every move, every exam, every heartbreak. Sometimes, Ariana thought he understood her better than anyone else ever could. Her one strange obsession was collecting dolls. She had started when she was 9, after finding a cracked porcelain doll in her grandmother's attic. Over the years, the collection had grown, neat rows of faces staring from wooden shelves. Some smiled, some frowned, most just stared blankly into nothing. For Ariana, they weren't playthings anymore. They were reminders of moments, fragments of her life pressed into fragile forms. When the Labubu Doll appeared online, she almost ignored it. It wasn't pretty: big eyes, odd grin, an expression too mischievous to be cute. But her collector's instinct won. Just one more, she told herself, adding it to the cart. The package arrived 2 days later, small enough to fit in one hand, wrapped in pink paper that smelled faintly of plastic and dust. The moment she unboxed it, Milo started barking. Not a sharp, playful bark, a low, uneasy growl that rumbled through his chest. Ariana laughed and knelt beside him. "Hey, it's just a toy," she said, stroking his fur. But his gaze stayed fixed on the doll. Ears flattened, teeth barely visible. Beneath his lips, she placed the Labubu Doll on her display shelf between a lace-dressed porcelain figure and a vintage Raggedy Ann. The grin looked out of place among the other calm faces. For a while, she forgot about it. The first week passed quietly. Then small, odd things began. One morning, she found the Labubu Doll on her bathroom counter, leaning against the mirror. She frowned, carried it back to the shelf, and blamed herself. Maybe she'd moved it absent-mindedly. But when it happened again, and then again, the excuses grew thinner sometimes. She'd wake at night to hear Milo pacing near the living room, claws tapping against the tile. She'd find him staring toward the shelf, tail stiff, breathing fast. "It's just the shadows," she'd whisper, pulling him close. Still, even half asleep, he'd keep his eyes open, watching. The third week, Ariana came home late from work. Rain had soaked her coat and she was too tired to think. As she switched on the light, Milo bolted toward the display corner, barking wildly. The Labubu Doll was lying face down on the floor. Ariana sighed, picked it up, and scolded Milo gently. "You knocked it over, didn't you?" He only whimpered that night. She dreamed she was standing before her mirror. Behind her, in the reflection, the shelf was empty except for one doll, Labubu, smiling wider than before. She woke to the sound of Milo barking again, loud and urgent. Half asleep and irritated, she shouted, "Milo, stop!" But he didn't. The barking grew harsher, closer, until she stormed out of her room and found him standing in front of the bathroom door, teeth bared, body shaking. The doll sat a few feet away on the floor. "Milo," she snapped, grabbing him by the collar. "That's enough." When he wouldn't calm down, she opened the bathroom door and pushed him gently inside. "Just for a minute," she whispered, shutting it behind her. The apartment fell silent. Ariana stood there, heart thudding, breath uneven. She turned toward the shelf and froze. The Labubu was gone, her chest tightened. "Milo," she called, almost a plea. Slowly, she opened the bathroom door. Milo was standing still, eyes locked on something near the sink. The doll lay on the tiles beside him, damp from a small puddle of water. Milo growled again, louder this time. Before Ariana could react, he lunged forward, grabbed the doll between his teeth, and bolted through the open kitchen door into the rainy night. "Milo," she screamed, running barefoot into the street. But the night swallowed him. The rain blurred everything into gray streaks. His collar jingled once in the distance, then nothing. She searched for hours, calling his name down every alley and under every parked car. No sign of him. The next morning she printed posters, left food outside, even asked neighbors. Days passed, then weeks. No one had seen a golden retriever carrying a doll. Ariana's apartment felt hollow without him. The shelf of dolls gathered dust. The Labubu space remained empty, a tiny gap that her eyes kept returning to. Sometimes she thought she heard paws outside her door. Sometimes she woke to the feeling of something warm pressing against her feet, only to find nothing there. Months later, she stopped looking. She packed most of the dolls into boxes and left them in the closet. Only one stayed on the shelf, the cracked porcelain doll from her grandmother's attic. The rest, she couldn't bear to see anymore. At night, When she turned off the lights, she often whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, Milo." She never said what for, maybe for saving her from something she couldn't understand, or maybe just for loving her enough to disappear when she couldn't let go. Sometimes, she dreamed of him running through rain, tail wagging, the strange doll clutched in his mouth, disappearing into the distance. She always woke with tears in her eyes and the faint sound of a collar bell echoing somewhere in the dark. And though no one believed her, Ariana knew Milo had taken something away that night, something that didn't belong in her world. She never bought another doll again. Before room 200, Nadia and Rayhan had lived in a small studio above a noisy cafe, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and laughter. Back then, they'd fall asleep to music playing from the shop below, share instant noodles at midnight, and make promises about someday. But someday had come with bills, long hours, and small silences that stretched too far. Rayhan's new job had meant longer nights and shorter tempers. Nadia, freelancing from home, began to feel like a ghost in their own apartment, waiting for footsteps that came later and later. When they found room 27, it felt like a second chance. A quiet, affordable apartment in an old building with faded blue walls and sun-damaged curtains. Rayhan said it had character, Nadia said it had peace. They signed the lease that day, hoping a change of space could fix what time had slowly broken. The first thing Nadia noticed when they moved in was the smell, faintly metallic, like old paint and forgotten water. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Room 207 wasn't perfect, but it was affordable, and after months of job shifts, bills, and late-night arguments, she and Rayhan needed a fresh start. They moved in on a grey afternoon. Rayhan unpacked the heavier boxes while Nadia arranged the smaller things, books, dishes, her desk near the window. By evening, the space began to look almost like a home. She found the Labubu doll in the bottom drawer of the old cabinet the landlord had left behind. It was small, maybe 6 inches tall, with a cracked grin and glass eyes that didn't quite match. A thin layer of dust covered its head. "Someone must have forgotten this," she said, holding it up. Rayhan laughed. "Creepy. Throw it out." But she didn't. For some reason she couldn't explain. She placed it on the living room shelf beside their potted plant. It felt harmless, ugly, but harmless. The first few nights were fine. They cooked together, watched movies, even talked about taking a weekend trip when things got better. But small things began to slip. Nadia swore she'd locked the front door one night, only to find it slightly open in the morning. Rayhan accused her of forgetting. She blamed exhaustion. Then there were the sounds. A faint tap-tap from somewhere near the bedroom wall. Sometimes, laughter, too soft, too light to belong to Rayhan. When she asked if he'd heard it, he only frowned. "You're imagining things again." On the 5th night, Nadia woke suddenly. The air was still, except for the slow creak of the ceiling fan. She turned her head. The doll was on the nightstand beside her pillow, its head tilted, that strange grin aimed right at her. She sat up fast, heart hammering. "Rayhan." He stirred. "What?" "The doll. I didn't put it here." He blinked, half asleep. "You probably moved it earlier. Go back to sleep." But Nadia was sure she hadn't. The next morning, Rayhan found the doll on his desk. He frowned but didn't say anything. The day went on, heavy and quiet. That week, they started fighting again about bills, about work, about things too small to matter. Nadia caught herself snapping over trivial mistakes, Rayhan walking away with that familiar look of tired distance. And through it all, the doll remained somewhere in the room, on the counter, the chair, the dresser, always watching. Once, during an argument, Nadia noticed Rayhan glance toward it mid-sentence. Just a flicker, but it was enough. "Why are you looking at it?" she demanded. He blinked. "At what?" "The doll." "I wasn't." Her voice dropped. "You were." That night she moved the doll into the storage closet and locked the door. 2 days later, she found it sitting on the kitchen table, directly across from her chair. By the second month, room 27 felt colder. The air carried a constant, low hum. Maybe the building's old wiring, maybe something else. Nadia had trouble sleeping. When she did, she dreamed of standing in front of the mirror. The doll behind her reflected a little too close. Rayhan started sleeping on the couch. "You're scaring yourself," he said one morning, rubbing his temples. "You're making it real." She stared at him. "You don't feel it. This place, it's not right. It's an old apartment, Nadia, that's all." Still, she noticed how he avoided the corner where the doll had first been placed. One night, the power went out during a storm. Rain hammered the windows, and thunder shook the walls. Nadia lit a candle, the flame trembling as if nervous. Rihan was in the kitchen trying to fix the fuse when she heard it again. That soft, childish giggle. Rihan. No answer. She followed the sound into the bedroom. The candlelight flickered, shadows moving across the floor. The doll sat on the dresser, facing her. Its cracked grin seemed wider in the unsteady light. Nadia. Rihan's voice came from behind her. She turned sharply. It's moving again, she whispered. He sighed. Enough, Nadia. It's a toy. No, it's not. He grabbed the doll, frustration flashing across his face. Fine, what? She threw it into the hallway, the thud echoing. There, problem solved. But in the morning it was back on their bedside table, right between their pillows. After that, everything changed. Rihan stopped looking at her the same way. His eyes had that glassy distance, like he was somewhere else entirely. Nadia began recording herself at night, desperate to prove she wasn't losing her mind. When she played one of the recordings the next morning, her hands went cold. The audio was faint rain, breathing, and two overlapping voices whispering. One was hers. The other was Rihan's only. Rihan had been working the night shift. The final night came quietly. No argument, no storm, just silence thick enough to press against the skin. Rihan stood by the window, staring at nothing. I'm done, he said softly. We're leaving tomorrow. She nodded, exhausted. But when she turned toward the shelf, the doll was there again, watching. Something in her broke. It won't let us, she whispered. Rihan didn't answer. He crossed the room, grabbed the doll, and slammed it against the wall. Plastic cracked. A sharp, tiny laugh echoed, or maybe it was the sound of breaking. He froze. Then, without another word, he left the apartment. The next morning, the landlord knocked. Neighbors had complained about noise, a woman screaming late at night. But when he opened the door, the apartment was empty. Dishes still on the counter, coffee half finished. Only one thing sat neatly on the table, the Labubu doll. Its grin now split in half, eyes dark as glass. Weeks later, when the new couple moved into room 2, they found a small box pushed into the corner of the closet. On the lid, in faint handwriting, were the words, "Don't move the doll." Ion never believed in creepy stories. Ghosts, curses, haunted toys, all nonsense, he thought. He was 17, logical, and more interested in gaming and pranks than anything remotely supernatural. So when his best friend, Zara, came to school holding a Labubu doll she'd bought from a flea market, he couldn't help but tease her. The doll was odd big eyes, a grin that seemed too wide for its small plastic face. Zara thought it was cute. It's limited edition, she said proudly, showing it off to everyone. Limited edition nightmare. Ion joked, poking at its rubbery cheek. You'll wake up and it'll be staring at you. She rolled her eyes. You're just jealous, it's cuter than you. That night when Ion dropped her home after study group, he snatched the doll from her bag as a joke. I'll take care of your creepy baby tonight. He laughed. You can have it back tomorrow, Zara groaned. Ion, seriously, don't mess with it. He grinned. Relax, I'll keep it safe. I'll even give it a 5-star stay on my shelf. He didn't think much of it afterward. When he got home, his mom was already asleep, so he crept into his room, tossed the Labubu doll onto the shelf beside his old football trophies, and went to brush his teeth. When he came back, the doll had fallen over. He picked it up, set it upright again, and climbed into bed with his phone. By midnight, he'd forgotten about it completely. Something woke him around to a m. At first. It was small, just the sound of something shifting in the dark. He thought it was the wind. His curtains moved a little from the fan. He turned on his side, pulling the blanket closer. Then came a soft thud. He sat up. The shelf was barely visible in the dim light from the street lamp outside. The trophies gleamed faintly, but the spot where the doll had been was empty. He rubbed his eyes. Maybe it fell again. He leaned over to check the floor. Nothing. Another sound, this time from his desk, right beside his bed. Slowly he turned his head. The Labubu doll sat there, propped against his phone charger, its big glassy eyes fixed directly on him. Ion froze. His throat tightened. What the He grabbed the doll, half angry, half nervous, and set it back on the shelf. His hands felt cold. It's just gravity, he muttered to himself. Stupid plastic thing. He turned off the light again. Minutes passed. The house was silent. Then came another noise, lighter, this time like a tiny footstep on wood. Ion's heart thudded. He turned his head slowly. The doll was sitting again, not on the shelf, not on the desk, but on his pillow, right beside him. Its grin caught the faint orange glow from the streetlight, stretched to wide, to knowing Ion's breath caught. For a second, he couldn't move. Every sound in the room faded except the pounding in his ears. He flung the blanket aside and bolted out of bed. The floor cold under his feet. The hallway light stung his eyes as he sprinted toward his mother's room. "Mama," he gasped, bursting through the door. His mother stirred, half asleep. "Ion, what happened?" He stood there, trembling, words stuck in his throat. It's in my room." "The doll," she frowned. "What doll?" "The one I borrowed. It moved," she sighed softly, the way mothers do when their children have nightmares. "You probably dreamed it. Beta, come here." But Ion shook his head, heart still racing. He didn't go back to his room that night. When morning came, sunlight poured into the hallway. His mother went to check his room. Everything was still, the bed unmade, the blanket on the floor, and there, neatly placed on the pillow, sat the Labubu doll, smiling up at her. The next day, Ion returned it to Zara without a word. She looked at him strangely. "You okay? You look pale." He nodded. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well." She laughed, taking the doll back. "Told you not to mess with it." Ion forced a smile. He didn't tell her what happened, didn't tell her how he'd woken twice that night, hearing soft laughter from somewhere near his door. From then on, every time he passed Zara's locker at school, he swore the doll's eyes followed him just for a second, as if it still remembered where it had spent the night.